Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ima. Hello, Ima.
Hello, sweetheart. Mwah, love you.
All right, so today's topic we will be talking about my father, which this day, today, Yud Tes Nisan, is his yahrzeit, his death day. A year ago, he passed away, um, and we wanted to celebrate his life by talking a little bit more about him and his dynamic with my mother. So, Ima,
hmm Yes.
I know that when you guys were younger, um, it was a struggle.
Oh, by the way,
Uh,
we grew up together in the same neighborhood. By the way,
oh
yeah. So
yeah,
we knew each other from the time we were infants. Our parents knew each other,
didn't
and
didn't didn't you guys like have Halloween costumes and you made fun of him for it or something?
no. What happened was there was one Halloween where I and my sisters had walked a tremendous distance, and we were out trick or treating for hours and hours and hours, and I had a big bag, a shopping bag of candy filled to the brim, and I saw your father walking. I think we were like 8 years old, 9 years old, yeah, but nine. I ran over to him and I go, "Look at all this candy I've got." And your father remembered till the till
Till
his
the day he
dying day
died.
that I did not offer him one piece of that candy.
You were just so excited you wanted to show it off more than anything
Yeah,
else. You're like, ah.
he always held it against me. And I said, but look at all the wonderful things, the wonderful meals that I've cooked for you and shopped for you.
Well, when you guys were younger, I guess there was moments where Tati was unemployed, and you said something about he went ahead and was looking for work and found an ad in the newspaper.
Oh gosh, that story was hysterical. Yeah, what happened was he saw there was a blind ad, and it just said looking for someone to manage our uh I'd say the string of stores. What would you say?
Yeah, string of
String
stores.
of,
That makes
okay, string of
sense.
stores. Yeah, and so send your resume, and it gave a PO box number. So he sent his resume. Well, the problem was, see, that your father had spent most of his life working in his father's store, so he was very, very familiar with retail management. That's all he had done. And then your grandfather retired and sold the store. So your father tried to get a job in retail management, which was basically the only thing he knew how to do at that point. And at that time, the Maryland Blue laws were in effect. So most stores were either closed on Sunday or very, very limited on Sunday with what they could sell and the hours they could be open if they were open. So your father tried to apply for a job in retail management, and it was a problem either with the beard or the yarmulke or the Shabbos, because they would tell him, I'm sorry, that their biggest shopping day is Saturday. And if he can't work Saturday, that's sorry, they cannot hire him. Or we'll be happy to hire you, take off your yarmulke and shave your beard. And of course, he would not do that. He was a man of very strong conviction. Baruch Hashem, thank God. We both were. So he answered this blind ad, and the person calls back very enthusiastic and says, "We saw your resume. We're very impressed. We want to hire you. Can you start Monday?" So your father says, "Oh, wait a minute. You don't understand. I'm an Orthodox Jew. I need late Friday afternoon off, and I need all day Saturday off." And they replied, "No problem. We'll be happy to hire you. Can you start Monday?" So he says, "Wait a minute. I need Rosh Hashanah off. I need Yom Kippur. I take off the entire week of Sukkot. I take off the entire week of Passover." And it was, "No problem. We'll be happy to hire you. Can you start Monday?" So now your father's getting suspicious. And he says to this person, "Excuse me, what kind of stores are these?" And the answer was, "Oh, adult bookstores," quote unquote. Your father takes a deep breath and he mumbles under his breath, "Where were you 20 years ago?" And he says, "Look, Sir, he says, I'm married. I'm an Orthodox Jew. I've got a family. No, I cannot get involved in any of this. And he hung up. Now, your father, eventually, he did get a job as a Mishagiach. In fact, friends of ours in New York contacted OU laboratories and OK laboratories, and they were very, very happy to have some representative that was living in Maryland. And because all the Meshigichim had to drive out of New York, and that meant staying overnight someplace, being away from their families for a couple of days. Whereas if they had someone like in the southern area, like your father could drive to Virginia, check out a farm or a factory there, drive to Pennsylvania, and be there and back in just one day. And so they were very happy to have somebody so close. So he was working as a Meshigiach, and there were a couple really funny stories that happened with that. There was one time he was a Mishikiach it was a non-Jewish family who made chocolates, chocolate candies. And it was a family-owned business, and one of the adult children had an idea. Why don't they go kosher and try to open up a new market? So they, uh, they I don't know who they called, a rabbi or somebody who referred your father to them, and your father advised them what they would have to do to go kosher. And he advised them also to make it Chol Yisrael, so that, all from the entire from community could take advantage of their product. So the father of the family, the old man, kind of did not like the idea, but he got outvoted by his wife and kids. So one of his specialties of the old man liked to do was around Easter time he would make his bunny rabbits, his big chocolate bunny rabbits, with the big chocolate ears that you bite off the ears and eat them first, whatever. But he went ahead and he just used his own non-kosher ingredients in them. Your father came into the factory and saw him producing these things and saw the ingredients he was using and stopped him and said, I'm sorry. He says, you're going to have to stop production. You're going to have to wash out your equipment with hot water. And so the old man started to hand him a $20 bill. Your father handed him back the $20 bill and said, like I said, you're going to have to stop production and wash out all your equipment with hot water. The guy grabbed a fire extinguisher and blasted your father right in the face with it.
Whoa.
Your father held his breath, ran to the nearest sink, and washed it off. And when the kids, of course, came in and found out what their father had done, they were just horrified. So I called up. At that time, Bana was in its infancy. It was just beginning, just the very, very beginnings of it. And so I called up the rabbi at that time who was organizing in charge of basic kashrus in Baltimore City. I said to him, Rabbi such and such, I'm very concerned about what happened to my husband the other day. I never knew this job held such occupational hazards. So he says to me, Mrs. Angster, please, I can reassure you, something like this has never, ever, 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 ever happened to any of our people. Just your father. So
So just my dad. Well, I have a question then. In those times when you were both in Crown Heights and then in Baltimore, um, as a newlywed couple and as a young couple having kids, clearly there was ups and downs. What would Tati do to cheer you up and make you feel better, like all's right in the world?
well, there was one time uh, when we were living in New York was very difficult um, for us as a young couple. We were living in this in this apartment. The apartment was nice. The apartment was a decent size. But I told you before, we discussed this one time about, unfortunately, in the 70s, a lot of the New York um, plumbing systems were very antiquated, and there was very often where the weather would be very cold and you would have no heat or hot running water until like I said, the plumber came to fix it. So, well, there's this one sukkahs where we were in that situation. I was very, very depressed. And so your father said to me, let's go upstairs. We'll go to the roof where the sukkah was. Let's go to the roof where the sukkah is. He said, we'll sit in the sukkah and I'll learn Rebbe Sicha with you. And I had this very sad expression on my face, and I had been crying. And your father opened up the book of Sichas, and the Sicha, the theme of the Sicha was Ashreinu Matov Helkenu Umanayim Goarenu, which in Hebrew means how happy are we, how pleasant is our lot. So your father starts to read the pasuk, and he looks at me and just cracks up laughing. So it was horrible, depressed look on my face, and the topic is Ashreinu Matov Helkenu Umanayim Goarenu. Another time he said to me, look, he says, you have clothes to wear, right? I go, yeah. He said, you got food, right? I said, yeah. He says, you got a roof over your head, right? I said, yeah. He goes, okay. He says, why? He says, why be upset? He says, look, you got all these things. Why be upset? And then there was the time that when uh, your grandfather first sold the store, and your father was having trouble finding a job. This is before he was able to get this position with the various kashrus organizations as a mishagiach. So we were just, there was one day he had no job to go to, and we had no money, and we're sitting there next to each other and sitting there in silence. And I said to him, well, let's look on the bright side. He goes, what bright side? I said, the only way from here financially is up.
um, so what else did you do, I guess, for
Oh, one more thing with the Vodka, with the Mishigiach job. There was one time that he was given an assignment to go to a farm where they were going to do a run of Chav Yisrael. And it was a hot summer night, and the farmer was just such a mean, nasty guy that he would not permit your tati to sleep in his house. Your father had to sleep in this little car that we had in the time, with both windows open, out in the field with the cows. And so he had the windows open. He was a tall man, so he had his feet. He had his head was down on one of the seats, sleeping, and his feet were stuck out the window. And he got woken up in the morning with a cow that poked its head into the car and was touching his nose to your father's face and went moo.
oh God, Tati really worked very, very hard for us. He worked extremely hard. I just looking back, I hope I feel like he was appreciated. I always feel like maybe sometimes he wasn't, or we just took it for granted. Um, but
I think all children feel that way because children don't know. A child is a child. Children don't know what it's like to raise a family and to have to make a living. In fact, I look back now, my own parents, I used to be very, very down on my parents about the hours my father worked and hey, he should have spent more time with us and yada, yada. And now I look back at the way both my parents worked in my father's business. And I said, my goodness, it was what they did was amazing.
so, what was it like raising a family with Tati?
Well, the problem was, well, his parents helped us out a lot financially, which was wonderful. My parents helped as much as they could. They gave, my mother was always going shopping and buy whatever was on sale. If there's any paper goods that were on sale, she would totally stock up on them and then invite us to come over and take whatever we wanted. Canned goods, anything on sale, she'd buy lots of cans if they were on sale. So she was, able to supply us a lot with food and with paper goods. But as far as like moral support goes, um, like reassuring us that what we were doing was the right thing. They We were like pioneers because our parents were not religious. So as far as they were concerned, you don't have money to have a large family. Well, what are you doing then? If you can't afford all these kids, why are you having so many of them? Which instead of looking at it like we did, hey, we are very committed to wanting to preserve the existence of the Jewish people because, especially in those days, was the heyday of the zero population people. And we saw a lot of the non religious Jewish people were having either no children or maybe one or maybe two at the most. And, if everybody thought like that, what eventually would become of the Jewish people?
Yeah.
So we basically, it took a lot of strength of character and a lot of strength of conviction to, live the lifestyle we were living.
So what did you do to keep the love alive? How did you keep the relationship fresh, and how did you do what you can to like still make it all the way to the end of the rope, really?
Um, that's a very good question. I got to think about that for a while.
No worries, take your time.
Um,
I can give you a lighter question, and then we can move on to the bigger ones.
I think I tried to be as positive as I could. I tried to be as supportive as I could
Hmm.
of your father.
Like, what did you do to be supportive?
Um, I I never got on his case for quote unquote not bringing home enough money or not having this, nothing that. I reassured him that he was doing the best he could,
Mm.
especially when he was unemployed and he was applying for all these jobs. I told him, I said, listen, you're doing the best you can. You're applying for all these jobs, and ironically, I was not worried because your father was not lazy, and your father had a very strong sense of responsibility, and I knew that this was a person who would toe the line and would do everything he could to provide for us. And I worked part time. He worked whatever jobs we could either get. I mean, I did daycare for a while. I also taught private music lessons, and I also I taught Hebrew school.
Hmm.
So and between that and there were food stamps. We were eligible for food stamps, eligible for WIC, and your father doing jobs for Badakasharus. Basically, we were able to make ends meet. It was okay. Things worked out.
So what did you guys, out of curiosity, like I know a lot of couples have like inside jokes, continuous jokes, things that you would say or do to each other just to make each other laugh, but something that was just the same old, like, oh, that's like a go-to thing that the person would do.
I would sing the country western song, even though we ain't got money. I'm so in love with you, honey.
What would Tati do to that degree?
Nah.
No, he would do something.
He was just, he wouldn't say, he wouldn't say
He was
anything.
very subtle in his ways. He was a very subtle person. I
Yeah.
know that for sure.
Yeah.
So like, was there anything subtle that he would do?
I don't know. He just wouldn't say anything.
Did you like that about him? That he was more soft and quiet?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. Your father wasn't quiet though.
Well, I know he
He wasn't
wasn't
quiet.
quiet
Yeah.
in one. He wasn't quiet in one way,
Mhm.
and he was super quiet in another.
Yeah. That's true.
He was two polar opposites together in the same person.
But I remember when he was working for your grandfather, when he was working in your grandfather's store, there were also some funny stories with that too. He would I would call him every day to give him like a list of things to bring home because his father was very generous. His father would let him take whatever he needed from the store. He would let him take home. Like if there were like say a shipment of diapers that came in and the box was slightly damaged, so he would let him take it home. I know you can use this. So at that time, your grandfather had one of those old drugstores with the eating counter, and your father felt that the eating counter was a big liability. It was a big expense. It wasn't pulling in that much money. Besides the fact that the people working there were very, very hard to get along with. So your father, for had been really trying for a long time to convince his father to get rid of the eating counter and instead to set up an auto parts store. Auto supplies. Oil, little things that the average person could use on their car. So there was an incident where one of the waitresses was a little on the crazy side and got so angry at one of the customers, she grabbed a knife and yelled, "I can't take it from you people anymore!" and started to chase one of the customers with this butcher
Oh
knife.
God.
And I called your father and I said, Zal, he goes, "Can't talk to you now. I've got to wrestle a knife away from somebody." He actually had to tackle this woman and wrestle the knife away from her.
Oh wow.
Then there was another time I called him. Also, the store was not located, how can I say it, in
The nicest of
the nicest of
neighborhoods.
neighborhoods. So one time I called him and it was, I can't talk to you now. There's a fight that just broke out between this woman caught her husband with his girlfriend, and
Oh God.
she's trying to beat her up. I gotta separate them. So he had that problem, and he was very lucky though. One time he left early. Friday afternoon he would leave early for Shabbos. Almost right after he left, a gunman came into the store and held everybody up.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jeez.
good thing he missed that.
All right. Well, that's our time. Thank you so much, Hema, for helping me out with this. And thank you, listeners, for listening. Again, this is Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. Please tell everyone around you, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies. Doesn't matter who listens to it, as long as you listen to it. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. Please like and share and find us on Facebook at Jewish Boy Calls His Mother Podcast. We are looking forward to hearing from you.